Hello and welcome everybody. Today my guest is Farid Herrera. He lives in London. He's passionate about movement, influenced and inspired by gymnastics, parkour, capoeira and breakdance, but his interest and level of expertise reaches much further. For more than 10 years, he has been teaching in person and online to people who wanted to build more confidence, move in better ways, trainers and coaches who wanted to improve their skill set, and high-level athletes and performers who wanted to reach the top of their performance. Farid has a unique ability to break down complex movement patterns in physical and mental building blocks to improve your productivity and bring new skills within reach. And you will have seen his work as a choreography consultant for some of the biggest brands in sportswear. Welcome, Farid. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for that intro.
Yeah, it's a whole lot of things, but we'll break it down in the interview.
Wicked.
Good. You live in London. As someone passionate about movement, how is it to live in a big city like that?
I've always thought that London. So there are two sort of sides of the London coin. You know, lots of people complain about the fact that, you know, it's rains all the time and it's polluted and it's congested and the tube is horrible. And while all of those things can be true, the other side of the coin is, I think, it's a place where you can pretty much find anything that, you know, if you have an interest in anything, you'll be able to find people that are also interested in that one thing, regardless of how niche it is. So I think it's a place that, you know, provides a lot of opportunity. It's also sometimes I'm commuting and I'm looking at the city, and I think it's also quite a brutal and harsh place. You know, the city sort of doesn't really care about you.
There's a lot of contrast.
There is. It's a place that's brutal in that it doesn't care about you and you are in it and you have to play by its rules. But at the same time, there's so much going on that if you have a forward-thinking mindset and a proactive way about you, you have also lots of opportunities.
Yeah, I can imagine there's a lot of opportunities because people want to belong to a community and there might be
and it's huge and it's so diverse that you can find people of any sort of any interest, creed, whatever you want to call it. You will find people that are doing the same thing. So yeah, and I suppose it's like that in a lot of the major big cities as well. This isn't, I don't imagine this is exclusive to London, but it's just something for people to kind of, if you're living in a big city and you feel drowned, there might be truth to that. But on the other side of the coin, if you start knuckling down on what things you're interested in and things you want to be proactive about, I think there's huge opportunity to connect with people that are into the same things as well. Yeah. So those are the
I can believe. So for someone like you, that is sometimes overwhelming about the choice and the availabilities and the people. Yes. Yeah, I want to pick up a martial arts class. I want to pick up this, pick up that. Yes. You find some rest still in the city and a place maybe that inspires you, or where you can just practice new things and maybe not always be amongst people or.
Yeah, so I think quite naturally, I think I would consider myself to be an introvert. However, I have practiced, you know, just being around people and enjoying people. And so, you know, we're generalizing here, but you know, I like spending time with people. But I think at the core, I'm an introvert. I have no problem spending time at home. And also, I think going back to what we were saying about there being loads of different opportunities and options, I think I have a lot of different interests actually that broaden away from just one umbrella. So, for example, movement would be one umbrella, and inside of movement, you've got all the different options. So that's exciting. There you got gymnastics, you've got climbing, bouldering, jiu-jitsu, all of this stuff. So inside of that umbrella, we have lots of options. And then I'm also interested in things that have nothing to do with movement, you know, things like you know, motorbikes could be one, you know, so I go to like motorcycling exhibitions and shows and all this stuff, which has nothing to do really with movement. I also like things like bushcraft, you know, living in nature. So I'm interested in all the different knives and the tools and carving. And so,
which relates to
yeah,
movement
which
in some
they're
extent,
kind of,
and
yeah,
it
they're kind of
is both.
related. Some of
Yeah,
them, those bubbles are definitely, you know, they have their links. But I think having those different things that I can go to refreshes me from always being under the same thing with the same types of people. And, you know, because every bubble has positives and negatives.
yeah.
And so if you're in that same bubble all the time, you're being exposed to the same negatives of that environment and also the same positives. So I think it's interesting to shift between all the different ones. And I think that's one of the ways, for example, that I find a bit of rest and solace. You know, if I've done too much movement or too much fitness industry, I can go and hang out with people that are into motorbikes and getting their hands greasy and mechanics, and then I can go and spend time in nature. And then also, I suppose I'm quite comfortable being at home as well. So yeah, I think that's been really helpful for me.
All about balance.
Yes, and diversifying your interests. I think
Yeah.
it's not the best to have one thing. You know, have all your eggs in one basket. It's the same thing with interest, with everything.
Okay, so this thing that we call movement, it could be a concept or a passion, and it's even a job. Huh? Movement teacher and movement
Yeah.
coach. And so, but what is it in your own words? Because it could be very abstract to some people, very broad, and yeah, people still think in the traditional way of sports, but it's something completely different. So in your own way of for you, what does it mean, or how would you explain it to someone?
Yeah, I've been asked to talk about this quite a few times, and I find it really hard because it is so broad. It is
That's
so
why I
broad.
ask you.
Yeah, it is so broad. On a let's say on a really physical, if we're talking about it from a physical perspective with the physical glasses on, the last definition of movement that I was able to come up with that I was happy with until I find something wrong with it is that movement or good movement is about finding the best, making your body the most optimal to function the best whilst causing the least amount of damage to it as possible.
With the longevity goal in mind.
Longevity goal in mind, and also thinking about, you know, the sort of the opportunity cost or the other side of the coin. You know, if you do too much movement, you'll put your body at risk of causing too much damage to it, too much stress, and then in the long term, you'll pay the price later. On the other side of the coin is not doing enough movement, sitting all day. You are actively causing damage to your body. So what's the medium balance there between having the most optimal functioning body whilst causing the least amount of damage possible? Because I think ultimately we have no choice. We live in our bodies, and so they affect our mindset. I think, you know, if you have to do like 8 different movement patterns to crouch down to the floor, something's wrong.
Yeah.
You know, we should be able to squat down, get down, pick stuff up. You know, the basic things we should be able to do well.
There's this whole spectrum of what we need to survive.
Yes.
But then surviving and too much in this society we want to survive.
Yes.
You go to the doctor, it'll make you better just to be your normal again. Yes. But actually we want to thrive. We want to go beyond that. But there's not much focus on this. So in my opinion, okay, we have the basic movements and it's good. You should be able to do certain things to live a good life.
Yes.
But then there's an extra. And
absolutely,
this will increase your happiness, increase your quality of life. And this is something you very much work with as well, I think.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that I found, I mean, what I'm about to say is obviously not exclusive to the way I came across it, and it's certainly not exclusive to the discipline that led me to find out about this, which was mainly parkour. You know, there were loads of, I think the interesting thing that that kind of brings me back to all of this is if your practice includes some level of jeopardy, so there needs to be something that you're kind of risking. And if it has some element of fear, you will really start to benefit not just from the physical, but from the mental. If, for example, I used to think, so in parkour, for example, it's basically you against yourself the whole time. At the end of the day, even if all your friends are watching, you're the one that has to turn around and you have to face whatever challenge you've put in front of you by yourself. Your friends
And
are not
being,
going to...
and being watched by your friends, it brings also another mental state.
Absolutely. But they're not going to be able to carry you in that challenge. It's you against yourself. And if there is fear there and there is risk there, I think it puts you it forces you essentially to think critically. And I think being able to overcome contentious, risky, fearful situations physically in your mind gives you that experience to fall back on. And, in another situation in life where you might be in it might be that you have to have a contentious discussion with your boss and you're like, oh, I don't want to do this one. You can always go back to the experience of what it was like to overcome physically. And if you make those mental bridges, you don't allow that to just dissipate into the ether. Oh yeah, wow, I did that wicked challenge, whatever. No, you have to think, okay, I did that wicked challenge. What does that mean about what I can achieve? And the more you kind of build those conscious bridges, the more you're able to utilize what you're actually doing and not just tick challenges off the list or whatever.
And to interrupt you a little bit.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make clear that the fearful challenges or the risky things doesn't always have to be very high or very broad.
Absolutely not.
It can be very close to the ground. It can even be putting your hands on the ground. It could also be so it's there's a range and it's for everybody. It's different.
Absolutely.
And it's not what someone else finds fearful but it is the same thing for you.
I think the core principle that you have to think about is, am I doing stuff that kind of scares me now and again? I need to have my reality shaken up, because if there's one thing we're sure of is death and taxes, but also is that life is, there's quite a lot of contentious situation. There's a lot of suffering and everyone has, a lot of things that go wrong in their life. So you can pretty much be sure that something in your life at some point is going to go wrong. And I think walking around feeling relatively prepared, both physically and mentally, can help you, just deal with the uncertainty and the contentiousness of life a little bit more.
Give you a certain peace of mind.
Certain peace of mind that at least, if I get into whatever an accident or if I need to help someone, I'm ready, I can do it. Or if I need to have that conversation with someone, I know that I can bring myself to do it because I've been forward thinking before and I've practiced kind of the art or the practice of putting myself through things that I find challenging and then hopefully also coming out on the other side, with your hands held high. I think having that connection is something that you have to do consciously, but I do think there is a link there. And it can also be lost if you just go to the gym, you do your reps, and then you go home and you don't think about it.
Probably you watch TV in the gym as well.
Yeah, then you're not gonna squeeze out all the potential nutrients that you could have gotten from that practice.
Yeah, because you detach the mind from the body.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you mentioned parkour,
yes.
And I mentioned a few other things in the introduction. So how did you end up lacking movement like you do now? When you were growing up, could you not just go out and play football, or what was it that sparked your interest in these kind of cultures or movement practices?
I think if I had to attribute it to one moment, I remember seeing a film with obviously the great actor and stuntman Jacky Chan. And I remember
one of the early parkour
Yes, he
in
was the
films.
original, almost the original parkour practitioner. I probably get slated for saying that, but as far as I was concerned, the stuff he was doing was amazing, and there was just kind of a correlation between his ability to move and just to deal with horrible situations with his movement and his body that really connected with me.
Also, the vision he had in those days.
Yes, I mean, I'm all about competition, and I like competitive sports, but there was something else to the act of watching someone deal with problems in a physical way. It was more obvious that he was trying to deal with a problem and using his body to solve it, rather than if you were just watching a competitive sport, you're just watching people. It's almost like the overarching idea is, oh, they're just trying to win.
Yeah, they
Great.
tried to
Yeah, they're
score.
trying to win. Okay, great. I don't have a problem with that either. But I think there was something more of substance with when I saw this kind of physical problem solving. You know, he was climbing buildings and he was escaping from stuff, and I was like, wow.
You have to
You know,
use your
you
creativity.
have to use your creativity, and there just seemed to be something of kind of intrinsic value in my brain to being able, you know, if I was watching him escape from the baddies in the films, and I was like, I could be in a situation like that. Maybe I will at some point need to do that.
Especially in London.
Yeah, I mean, anywhere, you know, or you know, you could be in an accident in a car or in a bus, or you might need to help someone, and I don't know. There was just something about the way that that was framed from seeing it in a film that really connected with me. That I think I wouldn't have been able to get from just watching sports. I think sports is very diluted in that. Not diluted, but it's very focused on who's winning, who's your favorite team. You know, you don't really think about why are they doing what they're doing. Whereas when I was watching this in the film, it was like, oh, he's doing this because he needs to get away from this trouble. He needs to solve this problem. So that really connected me to movement, I think.
And then you started to replay these scenes, or did you start
Yeah,
to try this out for yourself?
absolutely.
Or?
Absolutely. And I think, you know, as a kind of a coincidence, and luckily for me, my school was architecturally was very good for that stuff. You know, there were loads of rails everywhere, and there were like weird sized walls everywhere.
How old were you then?
I must have been about 13 or 12 or 13. This was in, first year of secondary school. So I think 12, maybe even 11. But I think 12 was when 13 was when it really started to connect. And so my school had really cool walls everywhere and rails. And I remember that also facilitated my ability to express this desire to move, which I suppose in another school that maybe would have a different setup. Maybe I would have been forced to try and emulate that in a competitive sport context, and then that raises up the question of whether that would have been effective or not.
Yeah, and sooner or later it might have come out anyway.
Exactly, yeah, or not. Perhaps maybe I would have fallen in love with cricket or whatever. I don't know, you know. So so I think that was one of the things that really started it off for me. Yeah.
Okay, because then from there on you started to deepen yourself into gymnastics, I believe, also in school.
Yeah.
And
So
was this coming forth out of your you wanted to improve in parkour, and that was the obvious
yes,
way to do it, or
yes, exactly.
was it more the gymnastics at itself that interested you?
No, I think gymnastic. If you take movement and if movement was a pie, for example, parkour, I would say, takes up quite a huge chunk of that pie. You know, because it's got a lot of movement. You're doing pulling, you're doing pushing, you're running, you're jumping, you're sliding, you're crawling, you're running, just everything. So it has a lot of movement. And at the time, as you know, because I was sort of a young, limited human at the time, at the age of 14. In my opinion, the other thing that took up a large portion of that pie compared to everything else that I had was gymnastics. Because otherwise you have basketball, you have football, you have cricket. And yeah, there is movement in basketball, cricket, and all that kind of stuff, but it's nowhere near as much as there is in gymnastics. So for me, gymnastics was the obvious choice. Now, there are also other things like dance and stuff that I could have taken up, but as a kid, gymnastics was the one that spoke to me the most.
Also because there's a strength factor
Strength element,
that at
yeah.
that age contributes a lot
Yeah,
in your capabilities. And
exactly. There's something quite powerful about gymnastics. I mean, I think Plato, if I'm not mistaken, and butchering history, I think Plato thought that it was one of the disciplines that all men should do. You know, if he had it his way, I think everyone would be doing gymnastics.
if you look at the Greek
yeah,
statues,
exactly,
you can see
exactly.
the.
So there might be something to be said there for that. But in any case, it spoke to me quite heavily.
Yeah. But so you were never you never had the ambition to become a competitive gymnast. It was just to broaden your skill set, to have more fun on the street and on the rails and the stairs in your school.
Absolutely, gymnastics for me was a means to an end, and the end was to become a better at movement, to feel like I was comfortable and in control of my body.
Yeah, and that was your driving force.
That was my driving force.
Because nowadays we have some competition in parkour, for better or worse, but in those days it wasn't there. So so at that age, and even older people want to compete or want to compare themselves with someone else. So and that's a huge factor to motivate and to. But it's not for everyone.
No, although, while that wasn't the main motivating factor for me, was certainly not to compete. I do think if you are coming at competition from a certain mindset, it can be very useful.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
to push yourself,
and and just to have that sort of, you know, to sort of check your ego. There's always someone out there that's going to be better than you at something. Always, you know, there's. Even at the top, you know, like Roger Federer has like Nadal chomping at his feet, and then Djokovic comes along and he's better one year, and then there's always going to be someone that's better than you in something. And I think, I think coming at competition from that perspective can be really useful. You know, it can help you respect the people that you are competing against. You know, I think I'm a big fan of competition. I just was not really motivated by it, but I'm certainly not averse to it, and I have used competition with some of my best friends, for example, have sort of inspired me to be better, and it's something that I definitely use. But it wasn't the initial driving force was not that.
Yeah, because then you in some way or another you come in contact with capoeira.
Yes.
And there is a game, and there is a in the Roda.
Yeah.
But it's also less competitive. It's more play. It's more exploration. It's more playing with creativity again.
Yes.
And finding ways to discover new abilities of yourself, and being surprised by your opponent as well.
Yes. I suppose it sort of also depends on where you go to and who you talk to. Because there are different styles and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I think there is a huge spectrum and ability to put your own lens on what capoeira is. You know, if you look at a sport, it's a competition. There's no way around it. You either play by the rules or you are out. So I think one of the brilliant things about capoeira is that there is none of that. There are some basic broad rules, but if you do it well and with style, you can get away with breaking them. And then sometimes it's okay, other times it's not. You know, it's very liberal.
More about who and respect to the other person.
And so I think that's brilliant. I think that's a fantastic aspect of capoeira, that you can sort of put your own lens on it, and then you can go in with that, and you can experiment.
So and that's what you attracted into it, or was it also as a contributor to your own movement skills and practices?
No,
Would you say, I'm lacking some things, and I might be able to find it there, or?
Yes, partly. it wasn't necessarily the movement, because I was already, because of my parkour background and gymnastics, I was already quite familiar with all of the movements that were being done and all the cool acrobatics and all that stuff. So that, I wouldn't say was the main driving force. I think the thing that I found interesting and the reason that drew me to capoeira, and again, it could have been something else, is that the main things that I were practicing were very, very individual. So think about parkour. Again, it's you against yourself. And then gymnastics as well. It's you against yourself and the judges. And so what I was lacking was a practice that facilitated community. Now, that's not to say that parkour doesn't have community. I think parkour has huge community. But in the execution, it doesn't. It's
interaction.
Yeah. So I think I was yearning for a practice that had, some sort of physical dialogue with something that isn't an inanimate object. And so, so that's essentially what drew me to it. And I think
I can imagine in your case, like you said, a lot of the skills you had already covered. And
yes,
I can imagine it's a very fun way to express them in a different way.
Absolutely.
Like, I have this skill set, I can also use it like this. And Absolutely. It would open new spectrums, new ways of thinking, and it would develop in different patterns with existing skills.
Exactly. And so that's what drew me to it. I think we all have a yearning to, obviously we're all social creatures. And so as much as people love saying, yeah, I'm an introvert, I'm a lone wolf, I can do it all by myself, at the end of the day, you can't. You need other people. And as much as I obviously pride the individual, I think everything we do realistically is related to someone else. You know, if you woke up tomorrow to an empty world, God knows how long you'd last. Yeah. You'd probably end up trying to do all the things you've ever wanted to do for like a month. And then after that, it's a bad day.
Exactly. You start being friends with a rugby ball and stuff.
Yeah, what the fuck are we doing here? If it's not to be and to be with other people and to relate to other people. So everything we do, I think, has a social element. And so, so I think that's a really important part of not just people's practices, but, people's lives. If you're a guitarist and you're playing guitar and you're practicing by yourself every night, I suppose at some point you're going to want to play to someone.
And with someone,
and absolutely. And so I think the social the social creature nature of our being is something that we shouldn't ignore. And as much as we can be introverted and lone wolves, I think we need other people, and we need to accept that, and we need to seek other people.
When did you realize that you wanted to become a coach and teacher? Is it something you always aspired, or did you roll into it in some kind of way?
Yeah, I was invited. I had no plans of being a coach. I was sort of quite busy training, and I was invited actually. So a friend of mine, which I will name them because they're good friends of mine, and it'll make the story easier to understand. I had a friend who I was training with. He was called Callum. And he was friends with a guy called Dean. And Dean had lost his brother in a traffic accident in Thailand. And so he started a charity in the UK, a bereavement charity for people, obviously, that have lost close ones, because there's not that much support here in the UK for bereavement. So he started his own charity, and he invited Callum and I to teach. He wanted basically us to deliver sessions for the kids, movement sessions. And Callum accepted. And at the time I was sort of working, I was doing like commercial jobs. So I was like busy. And I said to Callum, no, I don't want to do it. I'm too busy. And then the long and the short of it is he convinced me to do it. And I said, okay, I'll do it until you find someone else. And I did the first session and I absolutely loved it. Yeah. It was the first session. We had like 25 kids. I was like I was in like my 20s, early 20s, and I was responsible for a group of like 25 kids. Can you imagine?
And I can tell you, teaching kids it's different as
It
well
is
than adults.
different. It is different,
For me,
but
it's a hard job.
it's not easy, mate. But it was the
Yeah.
perfect entry into that world, you know, because yeah. And so I had all of these kids in front of me, and you know, they were just raring to go. Like, you know, it's not like we were trying to sell, like, teach them maths or English. It was like parkour. Like, that's the coolest thing you can do as a kid, and movement. So, yeah, I fell in love with it after that day. And I think it also, you know, I think I can't remember where I heard this quote, but if you're able to explain something really, really simply, it means you've really understood it. And when you talk to kids, you have to
You have to
simplify
do.
it. You know, you have to find all different ways of getting the thing into their head so they understand. And that really refined my practice as a teacher.
Yeah,
You know, I had to
yeah.
start with kids that, you know, had no experience, you know, they couldn't even walk. Like, you know, they're just like stumbling along. And
Was it a one-off, or was it a several classes you did?
yeah, so it was a project that actually lasted, in the end, it lasted 2.5, just under 3 years. And we were doing weekly sessions every, you know, every
You were
once a
learning the
week.
hard way.
OTJ, I think they call it, on the job training, learning the hard way, but it was amazing. And Dean was a great, you know, super cool guy. All the kids were like coming, you know, they all were bereaved, and they were coming from this, like, you know, neglected boroughs in the UK, and they had character, the kids, and it was amazing. So yeah, and then I sort of, the whole coaching thing sort of grew out of that.
And like I mentioned in the intro as well, that I found this ability you have to break things down really in the language of the person you are training, because you're training like middle-aged adults who
Yes.
want to be more confident in their movements, but
Yes.
also top performing athletes and performers. So you have to speak to them in their own language,
Absolutely.
and break it down in building blocks that suits them, not suits
Absolutely.
everybody. And I
Absolutely.
believe you call it atomization.
Yes.
Yeah. So can you shine your light a little bit on that? I think we mentioned it before already with the mindset and the fear
Yes.
factor, but can you break it down a little bit further?
Yeah. So atomization, I feel like I used that word for this particular context, but it must have been used, you know, for a very similar thing. But essentially, it's how can you say you have one thing you want to learn, and then there are all sorts of other things around that thing that must be in place before that can be done.
Let's use something like a cartwheel or
Okay, let's
any
say, yeah,
other idea you
let's
have.
say we want to learn a handstand.
Yeah.
So you have to look. So the nucleus of the atom will be the handstand, but around that nucleus, you've got all the little what are they called? The little
Yeah, neurons
neurons, whatever. All the little floating parts around the nucleus of that atom. And they are things like, they can be physical or they can be mental. So, for example, someone might be terrified to go upside down. So you can't even begin to address the handstand without addressing this little floating problem of the fear. So you have to break down the fear. And inside of the fear, you have the individuality of the person. So you have to be able to meet them where they are. You know, if it's a middle-aged person and they've never done any training before, they're probably not going to have a clue what overhead arm extension and range of motion and range strength means.
exactly.
So you have to be able to talk to them in a way that is relatable to them, and whereby they can digest the information. So you would work on all the different things that are required to learn handstand, like, you know, shoulder mobility, fear of going upside down, strength to support your weight, and all those things are addressed first. And if you do that correctly, after a while, if the student is diligent and they've done the process correctly, you will get the whole atom, well, for free, because you've not really had to work that thing explicitly so much. In the handstand, that's not the best example, because to do handstand you have to practice handstand, but there are other movement skills that are obviously can be addressed in this way, and that sort of support this example better. But in any case, we have to work all the different things around the particular goal, and I think that's I think that's a concept that isn't thought of enough. Sometimes I say to people, oh, I've been doing handstands so much, why can't I do it? And they haven't addressed the fact that their shoulder or their strength isn't adequate, and they're banging their head against a wall because they're just trying to do the end goal. Other things to address.
Yeah, because with this approach, the longer you practice, the more crossover there will be.
Absolutely.
And the more free movement, for so to say.
Absolutely.
It's not free because you work for it.
There's no such thing as a free lunch. But yes, exactly. Absolutely. One of those examples for me was, for example, the free cartwheel. So a cartwheel where you don't put your hands on the floor. I was working as a consequence of the free move, because I was doing parkour. I was working on my ability to jump. And because I was interested in gymnastics, I was working on my side splits mobility, so box splits. And as a result, I had a good ability to jump, to propel my weight over, and I had a good ability to split my legs. So when I tried the free cartwheel, I was like, oh, well, not too hard. It's okay. It's sort of like a free move. And I think the more you can compound in terms of your practice, the more you will find that you are able to do more. Yeah,
and this is also a reason why higher performance athletes are quicker to pick up new skills and new movements. For one, they have the experience and the strength, the power, the mobility, but also they did some work on other movements that have a lot of crossover and
I think that's obviously part of quite a big buzzword that's going around the industry today, which is to be a generalist. But essentially, that is similar to what we were saying before at the beginning of our chat, which I don't know if it was recorded, but we were talking about having different interests. And you have to have different things you're interested in. Just to diversify the kind of the bubble and the linear energy that you put into one thing needs to be diversified.
But it doesn't take away that you have your own specialty as well. You want to be broad and know a little bit of a lot of things. But it doesn't take away that you can get deep into a certain subject or
Absolutely.
way of thinking.
Absolutely. And you can have your preferences. You can try a million different things, and then you can always go back to the one that you just prefer. So, I like this thing. I like yoga. That's my favorite one. Out of all the things I tried, yoga is my favorite one. But at least I've addressed, let's take yoga, for example, because I used it now as an example. If you have a generalist practice, you've addressed all the problems and all of the deficiencies that yoga doesn't give you, such as pulling. There's hardly any pulling in yoga. It's all based on pushing, and then your whole anterior line gets strong and tighter, and then your posterior line gets weak because you don't pull anything. If you have a generalist practice, you've probably been doing some hanging, you might be doing some pull-ups, you might be doing some strength training. And so you can come back to your preferred practice, but you are more prepared to last long. So that's the benefit of sort of taking an interest in a wider diversity of things.
So we know as well that after doing a certain stretching program or creating more space in your body, feeling more free into your body, or a yoga practice, it's very important as well to implement the movements, to use your new acquired range of motion in order that it sticks and that you gain stability and strength. Can you say a little bit about that? How important for you how much of important it is for you, and how do you see it?
One of the things that sort of this reminds me of is I was working with a chap. He was sort of middle-aged, and he just said, I just want to do some training, and then sometimes people come to you and they say they want to do something, but actually as you train them, you start finding out that what they want to do isn't exactly what they think they want to do. You know, they might say,
Yeah.
oh yeah, you know, I want to become strong, but there might be something else under there, or underlying reason for the you know, the reason that they want to be strong. And anyway, I was working with this chap, and you know, he said he wanted to move better, and that's a very viable you know, viable thing to want. And he came back to me, so we trained for like you know, about, I think we had been training for about 8 months at this point, and he comes back to me and he said, oh, Farid, I was able to, I can't remember what it was that he dropped, and he said, I was able to crouch down and pick this thing up, and I was like, and he was just like, it just felt great. And I was like, in my head, I was like, that's the reason.
Yeah.
I think he said he wanted to, I think he said he wanted to train, he had an upcoming ski trip and he wanted to be prepared. Bottom line of what I'm saying is the thing that had more impact on him was not the ski trip. It was the fact that he was able to operate on a daily basis, doing a mundane daily task with more freedom, with more ease, you know, like I said, without having to do like a choreography of 7 different movements to get down to the floor. And I think that's...
But nevertheless, if you sit on your chair 8 to 10 or 12 hours a day, and then in the evening, you do a lot of stretching, do yoga classes, do other practices, but you never transfer it over to your daily life, it's going to be a very long process. And it's going to be less benefit than, okay, I have this new body. I can use it in so many different ways. And your body will remember, like,
absolutely,
we need this movement. We need
absolutely
more chance of staying there. So how would you advise people to use it? It's like, oh, just drop things on the floor and crawl around your house.
I think the important part is number one, to get the person to feel what you're trying to say. So in my case, this student felt that thing. So I believe in my mind that he is now not going to allow himself to fall back to the point he was pre that moment that he felt great. I think that thing is always going to be in his mind, and he's going to remember, shit, I felt really good back then. I don't want to go back to being the guy I was before. And then inside of that, you can start to, you know, advise people to either get standing desks or to get Swiss balls instead of chairs, or to try and build up like a 5-minute routine every morning and every night, you know, inside of that. But I think step number one is getting someone to feel like they can operate their daily machinery better.
Yeah.
Not just pain-free, because pain-free is one thing, and although it is great, it's not the end game, I think.
Then we come back to the survival and the
exactly. Pain-free is just, you're just getting by, but moving well is the bottom baseline that I think really has the most impact, I think, on people. And then from there is when you're really able to make the most further impact. Because at that point they're sold. You've made them feel like, shit, you know, I wasn't stuck in this crappy body. Actually, that crappy body was as a result of my crappy habits of not moving. And I can do something about it. And the proof is in the pudding. If you get that person to be able to move well, I think it's a smooth sailing road from there.
Yeah. So when starting something new or getting in or a realization, you have to start off with the beginner mindset.
Yes.
The call will say Shoshin.
Yes.
I don't know if I pronounce it well, but in Zen Buddhism,
I believe so. Yes.
And other places you can find it as well. But in my opinion, there's something that holds people back now in their 30s, 40s, and 50s to get into that mindset. And for me, when I think about it, it looks a bit like society expect you to be established, experienced, create a certain grown-up way of living.
Yes.
So it's like, well, you're going to do cartwheels, you're beyond that in this.
Yes, right.
And in that's my opinion, but it seems like this is part of what's holding people back to start something like gymnastics or parkour at a older age, or even a natural movement practice,
Yes.
or something new. Do you feel the same? Do you?
I would agree. I think, I can't remember where I saw this, but I remember, I remember thinking about this, and I think the more you can practice being embarrassed and being okay with that feeling, putting yourself in like maybe rather embarrassing situations, the more you can practice that, the more you're going to be able to express freedom, because you'll be able to walk into a room and not really give a shit if you're the crappiest guy in the room.
It makes me think of something I read. It's like the saying, dance like nobody's watching. It's the worst thing you could do.
Yes.
because
Yes.
Why are you ashamed of dancing?
Yes.
It's exactly what you're saying. Yeah,
that's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah. But I think dancing like no one's watching is a practice in and of itself.
Yeah.
It's not,
it's a good start. It's a start.
Absolutely. It's not something that, you're going to be able to achieve on day one. And I think this is something else, I suppose, that correlates with my, something that I got as a result of my practice in parkour, is that actually not even just parkour, just my general practice in movement, was that I came to the conclusion that you can pretty much train anything, right? And this, on some levels, might sound obvious. Yeah, of course you can train everything, but you can quite literally design a training program for anything. So like I said to you, I was a little bit introverted, and I remember being like, I could just design a training program to be a bit more sociable, and I did do that. I said to myself, right, the training program is 4 times a week. I'm going to talk to 3 strangers every day. Have I done my 1 set of 3 stranger talks a day? And lo and behold, I'd jump on a train and I'd see someone walk in and I would strike up a conversation. And I managed to, I followed my training program to become more sociable, and it really, really helped me out. And you can train anything. You can train being better at maths. You can train being better with numbers, with languages, with movements, with anything. And I think a lot of the time people fall into this mindset of feeling like, I was born this way, like I'm just shit with numbers, or
genetics.
I'm just uncoordinated, and it's such a horrible fallacy and a kind of a self-limiting trap. It's such a poisonous narrative to think of yourself as a particular label, and I think that doesn't do anyone any favors. So just as you can train your handstands, cartwheels, and your social skills, you can train dealing with embarrassing situations and handling those with, a level of, assertiveness and confidence, whereby, you realize that embarrassing shit happens to everyone, and there's probably no one else in that room that witnessed you doing something embarrassing hasn't felt that themselves. We're all walking around doing silly stuff sometimes, and silly stuff happens to us. And yeah, I think if you can expose yourself to that in whatever way possible, you're going to deconstruct this sort of self-limiting narrative that I think we can all be guilty of in some ways.
Yeah, strong words.
Yeah.
This brings me to in one of your earlier podcasts that I've heard, local motion.
Yes.
Podcast.
Local motion.
You were talking about end result culture, and
yes.
this relates a bit to what you were saying. So when you create this program for yourself, and it's a very what you said, it's a very good approach to improve yourself, but too many people, or sometimes you caught yourself, you're stuck on this end result. I want to be the extrovert, and it's a longer way than, for example, thinking in, okay, I'm gonna set myself a behavior program instead of a result-oriented program.
Yes.
Like you mentioned, like, okay, 4 times a week I'm gonna talk to people, and not to be blinded by this end result. Your goal was to improve. Your goal was not to become an extrovert.
the end goal wasn't numerical. There was no quantifiable, you can't quantify being better at talking to people. It's just, I realized there was a problem, not a problem, but I realized there was something I wanted to improve.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, my end goal is just to be a little bit better at this. I want to be able to walk into a room and not feel like I have to sit down and not feel like I can't talk to anyone. So I want to be a bit better at this. But there was no quantifiable numerical number. Not that I don't think that, numerical goals are useful. I do think they're useful. But I also think there are different ways and different approaches to achieving goals. Some are numerical, some are more system-based. And inside that system, you will need some numbers, talk to 3 people a day. That's it. That's a numerical number. You can quantify that. But the result is slightly less quantifiable.
Yeah. When I heard the term end result culture, it's like, he found a word for it.
Yeah.
It's exactly what is, I would say, not a problem, but a bit of an issue with nowadays.
It's misleading.
Culture.
It's misleading.
Exactly.
It's misleading because you see people, I've been watching loads of videos. I've been trying to, expand my knowledge. So I've been watching loads of videos on economics. And then I found an old economist called Milton Friedman. And if you watch his videos, for example, he's so charismatic. And you're like, you watch that and that's like the end result. You're like, oh my God, he was just born that way. He's just a charismatic guy, It's like, or on Instagram, you watch someone do something crazy and you're like, well, they're just talented, And I think that's misleading. We have no idea. I have no idea how many public appearances, Milton Friedman's had to go through to be as secure in himself and as charismatic in his opinions to be able to verbalize them. With a smile on his face and to affect people in the room. And so I think it is very misleading and limited to think that, again, it's that sort of narrative that we're feeding ourselves.
Yeah. I think it also contributes of getting harder into that beginner mindset, because it's just sometimes overwhelming, like, it's never going to be something for me. Well, maybe, okay, the end result, you might or might not achieve, but there's so many steps in between that you can achieve.
Absolutely. I think another problem with end result culture is, I suppose this is getting quite specific now, but I think people have lost their ability to think critically. Like, where has our critical thinking gone? If I look at, someone do something incredible on Instagram, I've tried to practice to remove the initial thought being, oh, this person's just fantastic. You have to think critically. What happened here? Why is this happening? Why is this person amazing? And then you scroll down on their thing and then you read a few posts and it's like, yeah, when I did gymnastics at 12 years old, you're like, okay, it's not genetics. But we seem to have lost this ability to think critically. We just sort of ponder about taking things on face value, and I think that's quite problematic. We need to be able to read between the lines, and I think the speed at which news and social media forces us to go, I think,
it doesn't allow us to think too much.
It doesn't allow, it's not designed for nuanced points. But I think that's super detrimental to the state of people, essentially. I think, critical thinking's gone way down, and I think it's devastating.
Okay. So is there at the moment, personally for you, are there other things, other ways of movement you're interested in exploring, other practices you want to take up, or did you start something new, or?
I haven't actually. I've been rather slowed down by an injury that I had in November. So I herniated a disc in my spine.
How is it going now?
It's much better, and I'm really grateful. And one of the things I always think is if I had reached, if I wasn't at, let's say, a level of self-preparedness in my physicality as I was when that happened to me, I would have been bad, I tell you. So I'm, in a way, I say grateful, but it was also, I suppose, my forethought that my preparedness mindset, let's say, it kind of allowed me to be, again, prepared for that contentious moment in my life. Like I said, we're all, if there's one thing you're certain about, is you're going to face some challenging, contentious moment in your life. And being physically and mentally prepared are your best tools. Digging your head in the sand is the most detrimental thing. So, yeah, so I feel like that was super useful, and I am a lot better than I was. But it has slowed me down a little bit, and it's also deviated my interest from movement
Yeah, I was
more
going to
into
ask,
like
is there then other
spine
things
rehab.
I never
Yeah,
looked into this because,
yeah, absolutely.
yeah, you
Yeah.
don't
So
need
as
to
a
know of,
result,
let's say.
yeah, So Dr. Stuart McGill, I don't know if you've heard of him.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's one of the leading spine biomechanists, and as a result of that injury, I signed up to his big 5-day summit in Eindhoven next year
Yeah,
to
I was looking
hopefully.
into that as well. So
Yeah, I got the early bird on it, so I will be going, and I'm super interested in the kind of stuff he says. There are loads of things that we think about the spine, especially actually in movement culture and stuff, and there are lots of things people are saying, and they're just repeating what the other guy said. Stuart McGill is like, he is the source as far as I'm concerned when it comes to the spine. So I'm excited about that. Yeah, so I suppose that's one of the things that that's one of the routes that I've gone down now.
yeah. Okay. Cool. Do you ever go for a run or a bike ride, for example? Or is that something that scares you away?
I have, I went running. I did a couple of 5Ks recently.
Okay.
I'm terrible at running. I'm not great at endurance. I remember for my Parkour UK. So in the UK, you have to do your level 1 and your level 2 in Parkour because it's recognized as a sport. So there are 2 qualifications you need to get, and for the level
Who is
2,
it? Who organizes it?
it's
Is it
Parkour UK.
okay.
Yeah. And so there's a quite a heavy physical assessment, or it used to be heavy. They've made it way easier now. But there used to be a 5K run which you had to do in under 25 minutes. So I remember the last time I did that was when I passed that course, and I was like, oh, I wonder where I stack on that. So I did a couple of 5Ks. I didn't do them in under 25 minutes, but I managed to get them out. And then I would quite like to cycle more, but I don't have a bicycle right now, so I might invest in one. And we'll see.
All right. Good. Well, it's been a great talk.
Yeah, good to catch up with you.
Yeah. Thank you for your time. But I always like to leave people with something like a tip.
Yeah.
Something that is it doesn't cost you anything. You don't have to do a lot of research. You can just go out or do it inside your house, and very low key, easy to start with, but it might improve your life. It might bring a smile to your face, maybe. What would you like to leave?
I suppose there are two things, I suppose. So people can pick whichever one works best, or both of them. Number one is I would encourage people to do at least one scary thing per week. Just do one thing that scares you. It can be simple. It doesn't have to be like a jump or anything. It can just be like talking to a random stranger on the underground or whatever. I don't know if we're allowed on the underground or what's happening, but it could be that. It could be anything. But just do one scary thing a week, one being the very minimum. And I think that you will feel immediately better, I think, unless the interaction or whatever you do ends up being horrible. But for the most part, if it's manageable, that will be a great one. And the other, in terms that's more physical related, is try to structure your training. If you're someone that struggles to train and you're not very motivated, just try to do the minimum required volume. The minimum required volume. So if you have a PT and he's training you and he's telling you to do 3 sets of 5, you're going to do 1 set of 5. That's it, in your own time. But try to continue, keep the ball rolling down the hill by yourself, and just do the minimum required volume that will still have benefit over not doing anything at all. And that can be, it doesn't have to consume a lot of time. It can just be trying to do 1 squat a day or something, whatever you fancy working on. If you think you've got tight hips or tight hamstrings, do one thing, get help, figure out what you need to do to improve, and then inside of that, do the minimum required volume every day.
Yeah, but do it every day.
That one. Yeah, and ideally, the thing that scares you as well, do it every day.
Yeah. Great. I will also post a few links because I actually think people should check out your Instagram. There's some very cool movement videos almost on a daily basis, instruction videos. You can see Farid in action. Also, I believe your YouTube channel is quite developed by now.
Yes, I'm trying to upload more stuff on YouTube. I'm basically trying to get to as many people as possible. I get messages from all over the world all the time of people saying, I would like to do your stuff. And I want to reach as many people as possible. So all the stuff on YouTube is obviously, free. You can just go in there. Like I said, I don't pull any punches. All that stuff is super valuable. It's the stuff that I use on myself. I use on my students. So get in there and, loads of stuff for people to dig into if they can't sort of work with me personally.
Yeah, it's definitely recommended, a good starting place for everyone.
Yeah, there'll be stuff
all
in
levels,
there for people.
And you will definitely learn something. Also, Playbook.
Yes.
I'm not familiar with Playbook, but I saw you were working together with them. What is it actually?
So Playbook is essentially an online training app. And they are very affordable, which is another reason that I decided to work with them, because inside of all the services that I offer, I have my personal online training, which is obviously a more premium, and not everyone is able to do that with me. So then we have Playbook, which is very affordable. I think they charge something like $99 for the whole year. And it's a subscription model. And then when you sign up to the app, you have access to all of the material that I upload on Playbook, which is exclusive. So it's not on YouTube or not anywhere else, so that people that sign up get something special dedicated. And the other good thing about it is that you get access to all of the other trainers that are already on the Playbook app. So it's not just me. And you get all of that for, I think it's like $99 a year. I think they're doing a sale. Or you can pay monthly as well. So that's the Playbook app, and then that's another option.
So it's a good option to take you anywhere you go.
Absolutely. It's sort of a middle ground. You're getting exclusive stuff. And there are programs in there. It's more structured than YouTube, basically, which is why the subscription, why there is that.
Yeah.
I've structured programs on there and stuff.
Okay, cool. I've been to one of your workshops.
Yes.
Now in these times, it's hard to organize, but are there any upcoming workshops?
There isn't, unfortunately. There is one in London, actually, but it's pretty much booked up now. But I was going to Dubai in October, which has been cancelled, unfortunately. I was going to Bucharest, Romania in June, which obviously has already been cancelled. I was going to go to Lebanon as well, but that's also been cancelled, and those guys are in, they're having a hard time over there right now. So, so unfortunately not, but in the foreseeable future, hopefully I will start to work internationally again, and again get to meet more people.
Cool. Okay, thanks a lot for your time, Farid.
Cool.
Very nice talking to you. And
good to catch up again, Ken.
Thank you for shining your light on the questions and we learned a lot, and I hope to see you soon in person.
Yes, indeed. Yes. Hopefully we can train again at some point.
Cool. Stay well and see you soon.
Great. Thanks. You too.
Bye.
Ciao.